Part 76. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 751. The Sakhalin warship opened the way, and the troop transport was at the end. After the Sakhalin army landed ashore, they quickly occupied the 4 northern islands. The small life army on the island did not organize effective resistance at all. After all, large forces fought, and the sporadic small life garrison had no power to resist. The news that Sakhalin occupied the 4 northern islands soon reached the ears of Asada Kamichi. Asshole, how could Sakhalin attack the 4 northern islands? Asada Kamichi punched the table hard. In his impression, if Li Qing was interested in the 4 northern islands, he would not wait until today and occupy the 4 northern islands as early as when the virus broke out. In fact, what he thought was right. Li Qing also had plans to encroach on the 4 northern islands, but he still didn't take action directly because of Dai Mao. This time Li Qing learned that Zairi was going to give up the 4 northern islands and wanted to counterattack Sakhalin, so he couldn't bear it. Kawashima's eyes rolled. Prime Minister Asada, what are we going to do this time? We cannot let Sakhalin get the 4 northern islands, otherwise there will be no buffer zone between us and Sakhalin. Asada Kamichi frowned and paced back and forth in the room a little irritably. He didn't know why, but he felt that every decision he made was understood by Sakhalin. He didn't believe that Sakhalin would attack the 4 northern islands for no reason this time. The main timing is too accurate. Dai Mao's side had just agreed to Xiaoxi's request, and Sakhalin's side took action immediately. This had to make him suspicious. A clever thought came to Asada Kame's mind, and he glanced at Kawashima next to him with an inexplicable expression. Not many people knew about this matter, and in order to keep it secret, Asada did not seek the opinions of other cabinet members. Only Kawashima followed from beginning to end. Could it be him? What do you think we should do next? Asada looked at Kawashima with burning eyes. Seeing Asada's eyes, Kawashima's heart skipped a beat, realizing that Asada might be suspicious. Kawashima pretended to be sad and angry and said, Prime Minister Asada, fight. We must fight back the Sakhalin Navy. The 4 northern islands have always been our territory when we were young, and they are also our bridgehead against Sakhalin. If Sakhalin is allowed to be occupied, I'm afraid they will take even more egregious actions. Asada Kamichi, who was a little suspicious of Kawashima at first, slowly suppressed his doubts after seeing the expression on Kawashima's face and the main battle's remarks. Kawashima, war can't be fought just by fighting. Although we are confident of winning, it's best not to provoke a war. After all, the South has been sitting on the mountain watching the fight between tigers. Ma Tian had a dull face and thought for a while, feeling that now was not the time to start a war. Kawashima secretly curled his lips. It sounds nice, but isn't it because I'm afraid that I won't be able to defeat him? The expression on his face remained unchanged. What do you mean? Well, after sending the news of Sakhalin's occupation of the 4 northern islands to Mao, now we can only hope that Emperor Pu will take action. After all, the 4 northern islands have always been their coveted must-have areas. Since we have decided to drive away the tiger and devour the wolf, this time it is time to see if Emperor Pu has the courage. Asada Kamiaki's face was uncertain. He was still not sure what Emperor Fudai meant, so he just took this opportunity to test it out. Emperor Pu. Kawashima whispered softly. But, we cannot do nothing and send warships to the 4 northern islands to confront the navy on Sakhalin. Asada thought for a while. If there was no response at all, his approval rating would drop. Confrontation. Well, remember to keep our warships away and don't really start a fight, Asada instructed. Kawashima. Just when the Zairi warships and the Sakhalin warships were confronting each other at sea, Emperor Vladimir Putin, who was far away in Siberia, also received the news. Oh! The 4 northern islands were occupied by Li Qing. Emperor Pu called Li Qing by his first name. From this, it can be seen that he was deeply dissatisfied with Li Qing. Haha, it seems that there are intelligence officers among you. Otherwise, why would Li Qing know about it just after we reached a consensus? Emperor Pu stared at the prostitute no Saburo coldly. Saburo Yoshino's face didn't look good either. He gritted his teeth and said, "Mr. President, are you so sure? What if it's your side?" Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Emperor Pu's laughter. Haha, do you think our big-haired KGB is fake? Emperor Pu trusted his intelligence system 100%, and he believed that problems could only occur with Zaire. Your Excellency, now it is not a matter of pursuing who leaked the information. Now Sakhalin has completely occupied the 4 northern islands. If you don't take any action, I'm afraid the 4 northern islands will really have the surname Li. Sanlang Yi did not dwell too much on this issue, but urged De Mao to send troops quickly. Who is Emperor Pu? A master who doesn't let go of hawks when he sees rabbits, not to mention that the 4 northern islands were still under the control of Xyli. If you send out troops now, your troops will come out from nowhere. After all, the 4 northern islands do not belong to De Mao. And he couldn't guarantee the attitude of China and the beautiful country after he actually sent troops. Mao does not want to become the enemy of these 2 major countries, at least not yet. You can resolve this matter yourself. After all, the transaction has not started yet, and we have not yet obtained the 4 northern islands. Now there is no reason for us to come forward. Emperor Pu said expressionlessly. He didn't need to think about what he had planned in his childhood. It's just like going to a club. The technician didn't even touch it when ordering, and asked for a 998 card. Only a fool would agree. No. Mr. President, you can't do this. What we said before. After hearing what Emperor Pu Dai said, Asada gave a death order and must persuade De Mao to send troops, even if it was just to shock him. Stop talking, just leave it like that. Emperor Pu waved his hand, and a staff member immediately stepped forward. Kawashima looked at the staff, shook his head helplessly and walked out. Judging from Emperor Pu's attitude, Kawashima already knew that the matter was irreversible, and Emperor Pu had made up his mind. After Asada received the news, he couldn't help but feel a surge of regret in his heart. One move in chess was missing, one move in chess was missing. If he can really succeed in cooperating with De Mao this time, the northern military government will make a comeback, and the offensive and defensive roles of himself and Li Qing will also change. Unexpectedly, the success fell short, causing Zaire to completely lose the 4 northern islands. President Asada, what should we do next? Kawashima lowered his head and asked. Asada sat slumped in the chair, as if he had aged several years. After careful consideration, he said, first ask for help from the beautiful country and see their attitude. Let the news that Sakhalin occupied the 4 northern islands ferment in international public opinion. After all, this time they are fighting an undeclared war. Kawashima frowned, asking for help from beautiful country at this time, I'm afraid. Sigh, if beautiful country doesn't agree, we have only one way to go. Asada sighed deeply. Oh? Which way? Kawashima asked, pretending not to care. Asada took a deep look at Kawashima and said, contact beautiful country first. If beautiful country does not agree to mediate, let's talk about it later. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 752. Kawashima lowered his head and responded quickly. He knew that he was a little anxious when he asked just now. Prime Minister Asada, if there is nothing else, I will go down first. Asada nodded and squeezed out a yes. Kawashima bowed deeply, took a few steps back, turned and left. Asada Kamichi looked at Kawashima's figure and frowned. He had doubted Kawashima. Through the investigation of the intelligence department, Kawashima did have no problem. But during this time, he vaguely felt that something was wrong with Kawashima, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. He sat in the chair and thought for a long time before pressing a red button on the table. Not long after, a young man in military uniform came to Asada. "Your Excellency, what are your orders?" Asada came waved to the young soldier to lower his head and whispered in his ear, "Azawa-kun, I have something I want you to do. You go." The northern part of Sakhalin Island is low and flat. Compared with the southern part of Sakhalin Island, there are large areas of plains and hills suitable for farming. The birch and willow trees were lush and lush. Li Qing and Mao Xianmin sat in a pavilion halfway up a hill, watching the people farming at the foot of the mountain. These are all new immigrants from the autonomous province. After more than half a year, they have completely adapted to life here. Li Qing even handed over the land he cultivated before the immigrants in his childhood to these new Chinese immigrants with a piece of paper. Of course, the small-time immigrants who stayed on Sakhalin automatically became tenants of the new immigrants. There is nothing these people can do. Now neither the South nor the North will accept these immigrants. It is better to stay on Sakhalin as a second-class citizen than to flee to other countries and become stateless. Sir, most of the new immigrants are now stable, all walks of life are developing rapidly, and the economy of the entire Sakhalin Island has stabilized. Administrative staff from the autonomous province kept reporting to Li Qing with materials in hand. It is precisely because of these specialized talents that immigrants from autonomous provinces can take root in such a short period of time. Well, that's right. We must also keep up with the trade aspect, and make full use of Sakhalin's geographical advantages. You should hurry up and connect the trade with North Korea. Li Qing teased Li Changzong in his arms and said with a smile. To be honest, when he first captured Sakhalin, he didn't expect it to be so significant. Today, Sakhalin has become a trade transit point in Northeast Asia. Whether it is Daimao, Hua, Bangzi, Mali, or even the northern dynasties, they all have to transit through Sakhalin. Some people may ask why trade was not so prosperous when Sakhalin was in the hands of Daimao. There is only one reason, and that is that Sakhalin is not a country, it is Li Qing's private territory. Some things that are not allowed to be traded between countries are allowed here. Even though Li Qing imposed heavy taxes on this area, these countries still flock to it. Take the northern dynasties for example. The whole world knows that the northern dynasties were led by the beautiful country to isolate them. However, when the North Korea trades things on Sakhalin, as long as it does not threaten other countries with sophisticated weapons, the United States and other countries will turn a blind eye. After all, everyone loves money. Okay, sir. We have started the third round of negotiations. The administrator nodded repeatedly. Brother. Zhang Dongzhou hurried over with a satellite phone in his hand. The administrator bowed slightly to Li Qing knowingly and stepped back. A call from the beautiful country. Zhang Dongzhou said softly, covering the phone. Li Qing handed Li Changzong to Mao Xianmin next to him and took the phone. Hello. Qing, it's really hard to find you, haha. William's hearty voice came from the phone. Pull him down, William. Aren't you more difficult to find? Tell me what happened. Hearing William's voice, Li Qing rolled his eyes. William didn't contact him because he was fine. Ahem, it's okay. Isn't it a bit inappropriate for you to declare war on the 4 northern islands this time? William whispered. Li Qing narrowed his eyes when he heard William's words. It had been 2 days since he had occupied the 4 northern islands, and William just called now. It seems that the northern military government contacted the beautiful country in the early days, and probably promised a lot of benefits, otherwise William would not be too lazy to care about Asada Kamichi. Hey, William, are you trying to intercede for Asada Kamichi? Are you asking me to spit out the fat in my mouth? Hearing that Li Qing's tone was wrong, William chuckled. Based on their relationship, he knew that Li Qing would not be really angry. He, isn't this a small day that promises us that our beautiful country's national debt of $22 billion will not have to be repaid? Li Qing rolled his eyes and said, "Oh, I was really generous in my little life. But then I thought about it and felt something was wrong. The beautiful country is so big." In the early days, the northern military government was colluding with Emperor Mopu, but they tolerated it. Li Qing's eyes lit up. "No way, beautiful country doesn't know about this, right?" The more he thought about it, the more he thought it was possible. He had reminded the beautiful country FO Bowl before, but it seemed that they didn't take it to heart. "Haha, William, don't you still know that Ma Tian and Emperor Pu were hooked up some time ago? The 4 northern islands, if I hadn't taken action first, I'd probably be named Pu by now." Li Qing teased with a smile. The expression on William's face on the other end of the phone froze, and the hand holding the cigar paused. When Li Qing heard that there was no sound from the other side, he deliberately said loudly, "Isn't it right? You really don't know? It seems that Ma Tian only contacted you after De Mao gave up his little life. Tisk tisk, he is using you to wipe his butt during this little life." At this time, William's face was about to turn green. This feeling is like a couple, the woman is hanging on to the man and at the same time she is also being a sugar daddy. As a result, she was prostituted by a rich man for free and abandoned her after getting pregnant, and then came back to find the man to get married. Little days, U0026, U0026 U0026 %, yuan %, #%. William couldn't hold himself any longer. Before he even hung up the phone, he started spitting out sweet cents. He didn't bother to hide anything in front of Li Qing anyway. When Li Qing heard the busy tone of du-du-du-du, the smile on his lips was harder than that of AK. Then he snorted coldly, "I'm afraid I'll lose my wife and my troops this time, Zaire." As he expected, Asada received shocking news the next day. "What? What did you say? The beautiful country froze $20 billion of assets of our small company with anti-dumping duties." As if Asada came was struck by lightning, "The beautiful country has shamelessly taken possession of it. Isn't this a humming robber? Bastard." He never expected that such rogue methods in the beautiful country would one day be used against Xyli. When the beautiful country imposed sanctions on China, I spent my childhood watching dramas. When the beautiful country imposed sanctions on Cuba, I spent my childhood watching theater. When the beautiful country imposed sanctions on De Mao, I was still watching theater in my childhood. Now that the beautiful country is sanctioning its small days, the whole world is watching the show. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 753. On the 4th day after Sakhalin occupied the 4 northern islands of Kojelai, at the United Nations General Assembly, representatives of Kojelai condemned Sakhalin for its undeclared war. Secretary General, on behalf of the Zaire government, I strongly condemn Sakhalin's act of seizing the 4 northern islands. This undeclared war is despicable and shameless. Everyone knows that the 4 northern islands have been an integral part of our daily lives since ancient times. I hope the United Nations will handle this matter from a fair and just perspective and allow Sakhalin troops to withdraw from the 4 northern islands. Zaire's representative to the United Nations stood up and spoke righteously. At this time, United Nations Secretary General Li Zaming, whose nationality is Bangzi, took off his black-rimmed glasses and placed them on the information in front of him. Representative of Zai, the term undeclared war is a bit too much. As far as I know, Sakhalin is also famous for fighting. The representative of Zairizhu was stunned and took a deep look at Li Zaming. He realized that the rotating Secretary General had something in his words, and he didn't seem to be on Zairizhu's side. Your Excellency, Secretary General, the division you mentioned is well known, isn't it the soldiers who were lost on Sakhalin Island? The reason Sakhalin was looking for at the beginning was that the Sakhalin maritime patrol ship disappeared for no reason, and the few soldiers on board were neither alive nor dead. The last location where the maritime patrol ship killed by Sakhalin was Order Island on the 4 northern islands. A hint of embarrassment flashed across Secretary General Li Zaming's face when he heard this. Ahem, several soldiers are indeed missing from Sakhalin Island, and the last location where the maritime patrol ship appeared was also on the 4 northern islands. There is nothing wrong with them going to the island to search. The representative of Zai almost cursed when he heard this. What is the difference between this and the beautiful country's claim that Babylon had weapons of mass destruction? What's the reason for this? What's the logic? Just because Sakhalin claimed that a few soldiers were missing, they forcefully occupied the 4 northern islands of our childhood. And international law? Are there any laws? The Zai representative stood up and accused loudly. The whole place was silent, and everyone knew that this reason was indeed far-fetched. Secretary General Li Zaming also pursed his lips but said nothing. The attitude of the father of the beautiful country was already very clear. What could he say? Ahem. A slight cough came from the microphone. The representative from China, who had never expressed his stance, straightened up and immediately attracted the attention of all countries. Haha, Xyli means this is a bit too much. Can't we just allow the state officials to set fires and not allow the people to light lamps? The Zai representative looked at the Hua representative and narrowed his eyes. He knew very well that Hua and Sakhalin were the same species. Oh? Where do you start talking about the representative of China? Tisk tisk, if I remember correctly, on July 7, 1937, Zairi used the same reason and asked to enter our country's Wanping County for search. After being refused by us, Zairi's militarism launched a brazen invasion China war. The representative of China spoke out word by word with hatred in his eyes. The representative from Zai was shocked by the eyes of the representative from the Chinese country opposite him, and was speechless for a moment. It has only been a few decades, have you forgotten your childhood days? Sorry, you have forgotten. It seems that we in China have not forgotten, we Chinese people have not forgotten. The words of the Chinese representative were inspiring. The expressions on the faces of representatives from all over the world changed slightly, some were surprised, some were gloating, some were apprehensive, some were afraid. The feud between China and Xyli is known to the whole world. Everyone knows that this kind of blood feud can only be repaid with blood, and there will be a battle between China and Zairi sooner or later. Now the small days are fading day by day, and the country of China is slowly getting stronger. This time will not be too long. Coupled with the fact that Sakhalin is now biting Xyli like a mad dog, I am afraid that Xyli will not be able to hold on for too long. The representative of Zai was silent after hearing the words, but a sadness arose in his heart. As Zai's representative to the United Nations, it was during this period that he truly felt what it means to be a weak country without diplomacy. Just like China 100 years ago. Looking around, there were all people gloating over their misfortunes, and their faces looked disgusting in his eyes. Xiao Tian didn't say anything. He arranged the information on the table and turned around to leave like a bereaved dog. There is no sympathy in the eyes of the Chinese representative. Not only him, but all Chinese people will feel that the scene is not enough to relieve their hatred. The news from the United Nations reached Asada's ears, and there was no expression on his face. He knew the attitude of the United Nations from the day when the beautiful country imposed sanctions. Nowadays, the little country has become a lost dog. The beautiful country is silent and no country dares to help them openly. Standing in front of the window, Asada Kamichi looked at the gloomy sky, feeling that the sky was like a net, wrapping the entire little day. Even if you want to struggle, there is nothing you can do. After a long time, Asada Kame turned around and sat back on the chair, picked up the landline phone on the table and dialed a number. Hello, Azawa-kun. Where are you now? Your Excellency, I have arrived in Fukuoka. Well, follow the plan and reach a consensus with Yasuda Junichi as soon as possible. After saying that, without waiting for Azawa to reply, Asada hung up the phone. If he had no other choice, he would definitely not bow to the Yasuda family in the south. But now we have reached the most critical moment in our little life. If the north and the south do not join forces, I am afraid that they will be cannibalized by Sakhalin within a few years. From the seizure of the 4 northern islands, it can be seen that Li Qing has a big appetite, cruel means, thick skin, and this guy relies on his advantages to get the upper hand. The northern military government alone may not be Li Qing's opponent. Now think about it, if Sakhalin really establishes a country, it will be a good thing for Zaire. At least there will not be so many forces supporting Li Qing. It's a pity that Sakhalin has no plans to establish a country now. After receiving the news from Kamichi Asada, Azawa immediately asked to see Shunichi Yasuda. I don't know what the two sides talked about, but the next day, news came that the North and South governments of Zaire reached an offensive and defensive alliance. This matter soon reached Li Qing's ears. It seems that Asada still has something. Li Qing smiled and flicked the ash in his hand. He did not expect Asada's decision, and estimated that Asada paid a lot to promote the alliance between the two sides. Brother, what about our plan? Zhang Dongzhou frowned. In fact, Ma Tian guessed Li Qing's next plan, which was to use the 4 northern islands as a springboard to continuously erode Hokkaido and continue to provoke the nerves of the northern military government. But once the North and the South form an alliance, this method will not work. The northern military government will not have to distract the South and will concentrate on dealing with the threat from Sakhalin Island. Li Qing took a deep puff of smoke, and the smoke overflowed from his mouth and nose, reflecting the uncertain expression on his face. Wait. Zhang Dongzhou was stunned when he heard this word, wait. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 754. Time flies, and 5 years have passed in the blink of an eye. 5 years ago, the alliance between the North and the South temporarily curbed the encroachment of Sakhalin Island, giving themselves a breath of relief. In the past 5 years, the entire Sakhalin Island has undergone earth-shaking changes. Because of the geographical advantages and unique tax system, all businessmen and travelers flock to this place. After Li Qing promulgated the tax-free policy for Sakhalin Island, the entire Sakhalin Island became a rising star in East Asia, and in just 5 years it became an international capital comparable to Hong Kong. And it has also become the latest gambling city, and its ranking even surpassed that of Macau. In addition, the extremely high safety factor here and the zero-tolerance attitude towards products have attracted a large number of internationally famous tycoons to buy properties in Sakhalin Island, greatly accelerating the development of Sakhalin Island. Zhang Dongzhou stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the skyscraper, looking at the dense crowd downstairs, and sighed. He didn't expect that Sakhalin Island would develop to such an extent in just 5 years. But the most unexpected thing was that the eldest brother said wait, and this wait took 5 years. Squeak! The door opened, and Li Qing, dressed in a black suit, pushed the door open surrounded by a group of bodyguards. Zhang Dongzhou immediately stepped forward, big brother. Li Qing waved his hand, and the elite bodyguards bowed slightly and turned away carefully. Walking to Zhang Dongzhou, Li Qing reached out and kindly tidied up his messy collar. Dongzhou, I haven't seen you for half a year. You have lost weight. Zhang Dongzhou smiled when he heard his big brother's words. Big brother, how could that be? I feel like I have gained a few pounds. Sakhalin Island is developing rapidly. Li Qing sent Zhang Dongzhou and Crow out to take charge of a bunch of things. He wanted them to learn something. They can't be kept by him every day. This will make people useless. How is it going? Brother, the 15 latest 055 class destroyers ordered by my hometown have all been delivered and are now docked at the naval base in the Java Autonomous Province. The Crow is receiving 10 Zumwalt class destroyers from the United States, and it is estimated that it will take 3 days to reach Sakhalin Island. Zhang Dongzhou said hurriedly. To be honest, he was stunned when he saw the 055 destroyer. He had never seen a destroyer with such a large tonnage. After hearing the introduction from my hometown, the high-tech technology on it shocked him. Li Qing smiled and nodded. My hometown told him some detailed data before ordering. This time, my hometown brought out all its skills to help him. The United States is not bad either, at least it doesn't hide anything. The main reason is that these two countries guessed Li Qing's next move. China is because of national hatred and family hatred, while the United States simply wants to make a fortune from war. So the two big countries that were at odds with each other reached a consensus inadvertently, and turned a blind eye to Li Qing's actions. Okay. It's almost time. Let the Sparrow also prepare and be ready to evacuate at any time. He is a meritorious minister. Li Qing touched his chin and said softly. Sparrow has done enough in these years, and Li Qing does not want his intelligence personnel to have any accidents. Well, I will arrange it immediately, don't worry, big brother. Zhang Dongzhou hurriedly bowed his head. When the Crow arrives, we will start the action. Li Qing said decisively. He had been waiting for this day for 5 years. In fact, Sakhalin Island could also take action 5 years ago, but the North and South governments suddenly formed an alliance, and Li Qing was not sure of winning. He has always made plans before making decisions. If he is not sure, he would rather wait than act rashly. This wait is 5 years. Hokkaido, Sapporo, the capital. Kawashima frowned, with a flash of shock on his face from time to time. He strode out of the building without paying any attention to the staff who kept greeting him. When he came to the car, he looked up at the capital, as if he was reminiscing about something, then sighed, opened the car door, got in the car and left quickly. But he didn't know that on the top floor of the building, Asada Kamichi folded his arms and looked at the distant Kawashima with an uncertain face. In the past 5 years, the northern military government has not been standing still. The United States gave up its garrison and let them formally organize the Little Day Army. The newly established army followed the Little Day Army organization during World War II, and now the army has a full 5 divisions. The Navy is lacking, with only 1 division, and it is unlikely that the Navy will have a long-term development in a short period of time. After all, the construction of warships alone is not an easy task. If they are purchased, they are just eliminated by other countries. Prime Minister Asada, should we get rid of Kawashima? Azawa walked to Asada and said with a gloomy look. It is precisely because Kawashima's influence on Asada has been getting smaller and smaller in recent years that Azawa has replaced Kawashima and become a military advisor. Kawashima's dismissal this time was partly due to Azawa's interference, and of course it was mainly because Kawashima lost Asada Kamiaki's trust. Azawa-kun, is Kawashima an intelligence officer from Sakhalin? Asada was a little distracted. People are emotional animals. After all, Kawashima has been with him for so many years. Azawa glanced at Asada carefully. Maybe, right. Kawashima was too slippery, and the intelligence organization has not been able to catch him in these years. Well, don't let him die too painfully, Asada Kamichi said calmly. His words made Azawa stunned. Azawa thought that Asada would let Kawashima go because of his soft heart, but he still underestimated Prime Minister Asada. Yes. Azawa hurried out. At this time, Kawashima, who was sitting in the car, looked a little anxious. With his understanding of Asada, he would never let him go. Although he had covered up well and there were no flaws, with Asada's temper, he would kill him even if it was falsely accused. In fact, he had received the news from the headquarters to retreat, but he wanted to learn a secret from Asada, which wasted time. Today, Asada came let it slip, and he knew the secret. Unexpectedly, he was immediately dismissed by Asada because of this. That's right, if he were Asada, he would not let go of the person who knew the secret. Mr. Kawashima, the car behind is coming, the driver looked at the rearview mirror and reminded. The driver was sent by the headquarters to protect him. Well, can you get rid of it? Kawashima looked back and saw that several commercial vehicles were following closely. One look at the license plate showed that these people were from the intelligence organization. I'll try my best. Boom, the accelerator sounded, and Kawashima suddenly felt a push on his back, and the car instantly accelerated and turned into the downtown. After turning many corners, he finally got rid of the pursuing vehicle. Kawashima looked back and was relieved to see that he had gotten rid of the other party. It's okay. I've been following you for so long, and this is the first time I've seen you have such driving skills. The driver didn't say anything but smiled. Just kidding, the Aoki Group's Lang Langshan god of cars is not in vain. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 755. On the fourth day, 10 Zumwalt-class destroyers made by the United States arrived at the naval base in the south of Sakhalin Island. Li Qing brought Zhang Dongzhou and others to greet Crow in person. Looking at the tanned Crow, Li Qing joked, "What? You just went on a business trip and changed your skin color? I wonder if Isabella can still recognize it." Crow heard his elder brothers teasing and came over with a smile. "Brother, don't look at me tanned, but as long as Isabella squats, she will definitely recognize it. After all, the face is dark, but the gun is gone." Li Qing. Zhang Dongzhou. Only Crow can say such a fierce word. "Brother, if you want to talk about black, the United States is really black. These 10 destroyers cost us so much money." Crow touched his head and smacked his lips. He thought that his people were already black enough to sell arms, but he didn't expect that the United States was even darker. Li Qing didn't say anything, just stood at the dock and looked at the destroyers. This is Li Qing. If it were someone else, no matter how much money they had, they probably couldn't buy the Zumwalt-class destroyer. After all, this is the bottom of the United States. Now that the things we are waiting for are all here, our plan can start, Li Qing said in a low voice that only he could hear. "Let's go, welcome Crow." Li Qing waved his hand and was about to take people to the car. However, after Zhang Dongzhou received a call, he quickly came to Li Qing. "Brother, something happened to Sparrow." Li Qing paused and stopped getting in the car. "What's going on?" He had already ordered to fully protect Sparrow and withdraw to Sakhalin Island. Logically, this escort mission should be no problem. Sparrow did not evacuate on the specified date, and now he is being bitten by Xiaorizai's intelligence personnel. And the Hokkaido waters have been completely blocked, and Xiaorizai's group obviously doesn't want to let him go. The confidential information sent by Sparrow. Zhang Dongzhou didn't finish speaking, but just looked at the people on his left and right. Li Qing knew that the information sent by Sparrow was very important, otherwise Zhang Dongzhou would not have made such a move. Then he waved his hand, and the bodyguards beside him, except Crow, walked around until they were 5 meters away. Zhang Dongzhou came forward and whispered in Li Qing's ear. "Sparrow said that Ma Tiangi made 2 nuclear bombs under Mount Fuji." Huh? Li Qing raised his eyebrows slightly, and this matter surprised him. He knew that Xiao Ri had the ability to make nuclear weapons, but he didn't expect that he would actually make nuclear weapons under the noses of Sakhalin Island and the United States. "You know, Although the United States did not station troops in Xiaori, the United States Buddha bowl in Xiaori was not idle. Besides, he didn't notice it on his side, and Ma Tian kept it secret well. No wonder Sparrow took such a big risk to get the secret. Mount Fuji? Hum Liqing snorted coldly. In his opinion, the two nuclear weapons prepared by Ma Tian were mainly to deal with him, and maybe they had the intention of dying together. Do your best to rescue Sparrow, let the 4 northern islands dispatch mobile forces, and make sure Sparrow's safety. Liqing gave the order directly. The secret brought back by Sparrow was too important. Yes. Don't worry, big brother. Zhang Dongzhou didn't dare to delay and turned around to make arrangements. Crow, it seems that your welcoming banquet will have to wait. When Sparrow arrives, let's have a good drink. Liqing turned to Crow and said. Hee, big brother, I'm not in a hurry. Sparrow's alcohol tolerance is not something I can handle myself. Haha. Pa Kawashima spit a mouthful of blood foam on the ground and pushed the body on his body down. Damn it, you want to capture me alive? Dream on, I'm a karate champion. Hey, Lang Langshankar God, how are you? Kawashima sat on the ground panting, looking at Lang Langshankar God who was covering his lower back 5 meters away. Ojabke. Back then, I chopped from Zioan district to Zonghua Road, and then from Zonghua Road to Erking Street without blinking an eye. I am the god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain, am I just a name for nothing? The god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain's breathing became heavier and heavier. Kawashima's face was solemn, and he tried his best to stand up, dragging his body in pain, and slowly moved to the side of the god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain. In order to catch him alive, these people did not use guns, but they all carried knives with them, and he himself had several cuts. The god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain was probably hit. Don't move. Kawashima came to the side of the god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain and saw blood constantly flowing out from the gaps between his hands covering his lower back. The expression on his face changed, and he quickly tore a piece of cloth from a corpse not far away and was about to bandage the god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain. No need, it penetrated the kidney. The god of cars in Lang Lang Mountain, who had been wandering on the streets for many years, naturally knew that he was beyond the reach of gods at this time. Kawashima bandaged him without any care, moved him to the wall, then sat beside him and leaned against the wall, took out 2 cigarettes, lit them, and handed one to the god of cars. Brother, your name is Kasai Nobuhide, right? Kawashima took a deep puff of the cigarette. He only knew the name of the god of cars of Lang Lang Mountain today. Ahem, of course, my name is Litnz. A genuine son of the Li family. Litnz's breathing became more and more rapid. Well, I remember it. Litnz. Do you want to know my name? Kawashima looked up at the gray sky. No. You are a sparrow, go back alive, alive. Cough cough, this smoke is really humming strong, cough cough. Yes, the smoke is really strong. Hum. A drop of rain fell from the sky and hit the 2 people's faces. It's raining. Cough cough, yes, it's raining. Sparrow, there is a willow tree in front of my house. Yeah. Whenever the willow tree sprouts, my mother will use the skin on the willow branches to make whistles for me and my sister, and we will run around blowing the whistles. Litnz's words are getting more and more fluent. Yeah. Sparrow, the willow trees in my hometown have sprouted. The rain is getting heavier. A faint hiss sounded, and Kawashima's hand holding the cigarette paused slightly. I don't know since when, the only sound around was Kawashima's heavy breathing. Brother, let's get to know each other again. Hello, the racing god of Lang Lang Mountain, Litnz, my name is Hashidashai, Kawashima said softly. This is the first time in so many years that he has said his real name. Kawashima turned his head and looked at the side. Li Tianzi's hands were hanging down, the cigarette was soaked in the rain, and his eyes had lost their light. He reached out and closed Li Tianzi's eyes, the racing god of Lang Lang Mountain. Kawashima tried his best to stand up, holding the wall, and slowly walked out of the alley. There was not much time left for him. He had to reach the fishing port of Xiniao village as quickly as possible, where the person who was meeting him was waiting for him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 756. Late at night, at the northernmost port of Razi on Sakhalin Island, a ship hurriedly arrived at the port under the cover of darkness. The port pier was crowded and heavily guarded, and ambulances were on standby with blue and red lights flashing. As soon as the ship docked, Kawashima, who was seriously injured, was taken out of the ship and rushed towards the hospital. Brother, the Sparrow is here. It's just. Zhang Dongzhou received the news and came to Li Qing and whispered. Li Qing frowned slightly. Just what? It's just that the injury is quite serious. I don't know if I can survive it. I'm in the hospital now. Zhang Dongzhou didn't dare to look at his eldest brother, but he gritted his teeth and said. Li Qing's expression froze. How could it be? Is there any mistake in it? In order to protect Sparrow's safety and escape from Sakhalin Island, they used the elite mobile troops from the 4 northern islands. Unexpectedly, Sparrow was still injured. A lot of troops were used on the other side. In order to catch sparrows, they even blocked part of the sea area in the north of Hokkaido. No one expected that Asada Kamichi would mobilize so many troops just to catch sparrows alone. Li Qing closed his eyes and thought for a while, then walked out first. Let's go to the hospital. The group rushed to the hospital and met Zhang Qiandan coming out of the ward. Qiandan, how are you? Brother, you came just in time. Sparrow won't do the surgery no matter what, and insists on seeing you. Zhang Qiandan said hurriedly. Li Qing nodded and quickly walked into the ward. I saw Kawashima lying on the hospital bed with a pale face. His blood-stained right arm had been simply bandaged, and the wound on his face was everted, and the nurse next to him was helping to deal with it. Seeing Li Qing walk into the ward, Kawashima's eyes lit up, and he managed to straighten up despite the dissuasion of the doctors and nurses. Boss. Li Qing quickly walked a few steps and gave him a hand. Che-ye, long time no see. Chiao Xia Che-ye had joined Li Qing's disciples after being poisoned by the plague, and had been lurking inside Xiaoli. With the help of Shinsekai, he lurked in the Kojiri government under the pseudonym Kawashima, and eventually became a cabinet member and the right-hand man of Asada Kamichi. It is also the most important nail for Li Qing to insert into the northern military government. Don't say anything, just do the surgery first. Through understanding, Li Qing learned that Jiao Xiaoshai not only suffered a penetrating injury to his arm, but also had several ribs broken, one of which was very close to the heart. Boss, I have an important confidential report. Xiaoxiashai gasped and said. It was precisely because of this secret that he insisted on waiting for Li Qing, because he didn't know if he could get off the operating table. Li Qing glanced at Zhang Dongzhou when he heard this. Zhang Dongzhou nodded slightly and immediately emptied the entire ward. It wasn't until everyone walked out of the ward that Li Qing said, what secret? Not only did Asada hide 2 nuclear weapons under Mount Fuji, he also teamed up with Shunichi Yasuda of the south to place a nuclear weapon on Miyake Island, one of the 7 islands in Izu. Once the war breaks out, the target is directly at the Bal Manor on Sakhalin Island. Shai glanced at Li Qing under the bridge. He knew that Li Qing had been living in Bor Manor in the south. Li Qing was silent for a moment. Is this news accurate? He knew there were 2 nuclear weapons at the foot of Mount Fuji, but he had just learned about one nuclear weapon on Miyake Island. Inseparable. The direct source of the news is the wife of the confidentiality officer of the Northern Military Government. In fact, Kashixia Shai was sure that the news was 100% correct, but he still didn't dare to be so sure in front of boss Li Cheng. Well, I know about this. Your mission has been completed. Let's do the surgery first, and we'll talk about the rest later. Li Cheng nodded and said, Boss, I have a brother named Li Tianzi, whose ancestral home is Ludong. Shai pursed his lips under the bridge and said softly. Li Cheng sighed and patted his shoulder. I know every brother who died. Don't worry, his family has been properly arranged. Under the bridge, Shai said nothing and nodded. Coming out of Shai's ward under the bridge, Li Cheng directly asked Zhang Dongzhou to notify the top military officials for a meeting. Half an hour later, except for those officers who were stationed outside and could not make it back, all the top military officials gathered in the conference room of the headquarters. Li Cheng was sitting in the main seat, looking at the energetic officers, coughing slightly, and everyone stood up and waited for Li Cheng's lecture. 5 years, we have been waiting for 5 years. In the past 5 years, I believe everyone here knows that our army has been working hard to accumulate strength. I believe you have been waiting for this day for a long time. Li Cheng looked around and said. When the officers heard this, they became excited. They knew that the war was about to begin. Officers like them are looking forward to this day. Only war is the fastest way to promotion for soldiers. What's more, it was still a small day with a blood feud. Who dares to say that any Chinese person does not have the dream of riding on horseback to enjoy cherry blossoms in Tokyo? You are all elders who have followed me for a long time. You fought bloody battles with me in Java and won the independence of the autonomous province. The autonomous province is just the beginning. Now I will lead you to new victories. A large area of land south of Sakhalin Island and north of the autonomous province is waiting for us to conquer. Hearing the words of the leader Li Cheng, everyone's eyes glowed hotly. They knew that the leader was talking about the 4 islands of the entire Little Days. In fact, Li Cheng had this idea a long time ago. Since he got Sakhalin Island, he thought of the method of attacking from both sides. After these years of preparation, the continuous deployment of troops from Sakhalin Island and the autonomous province did not attract the attention of the north and south of Zaire. Now everything is ready and we can proceed to the next step. Now, I decide to start a full-scale war against Zaire. Li Cheng's words rang out in the conference room, and all the officers showed joy on their faces, and stood up at the same time. From this moment on, all personnel will enter the first level of combat preparation. Sakhalin Island and the autonomous province started like a war machine: military deployment, intelligence collection, diplomatic mediation, economic preparation, public mobilization. Everything is proceeding in an orderly manner. However, ordinary people did not feel anything unusual, because Sakhalin Island and the autonomous province have made sufficient preparations over the years. Li Cheng was not idle either, he was actively communicating with the United States and China. This decision will definitely affect the deployment of the 2 countries in East Asia. This matter cannot bypass the 2 countries, and Li Cheng is not just starting a war. He also wants to use the big baby. Yes, in order to eliminate the danger in its infancy, he decided to use the big treasure. He felt uneasy if he didn't get rid of the things under Mount Fuji and on Miyakejima Island in advance. And he was ready to use 2 lovely big treasures just like the United States did decades ago. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 757. Li, do you know the consequences of using nuclear weapons? You must know that since the end of World War II, no country in the world has dared to use nuclear weapons. If you take the lead in using nuclear weapons, I'm afraid we won't be able to silence the international public. When the time comes, you will be the target of public criticism. After William received the news from Li Qing, he still wanted to persuade his friend. Nuclear weapons are used for deterrence. If they are really used, I am afraid it will open a Pandora's box and get out of control. William, as you know, I have 3 nuclear weapons in my hands now. I don't want to be too passive. If the other party uses them first, I'm afraid I will die. Li Qing sighed deeply and explained. In fact, there was another important reason why he took the lead in using nuclear weapons to strike. He regarded this time as a war to destroy the country. Either he would destroy the country in a small life, or he would completely lose Sakhalin Island and the autonomous province and become an ordinary arms dealer. There is simply no room for relaxation between the two. If a full-scale war begins and both sides have nuclear weapons, Li Qing's plan to destroy the country will not be implemented. The United Nations will definitely not agree to the two sides provoking a nuclear war. Only by striking first, cooking before the rice is cooked, and using nuclear weapons to detonate nuclear weapons in small lives, can we truly gain an advantage. After all, based on the current situation, the New World has 5 nuclear weapons. William on the other end of the phone was silent for a long time. He knew Li Qing's temper and attitude towards his small life, and he also knew that he couldn't persuade him. But from the perspective of the beautiful country, he still made a request to Li Qing. Li, we can be neutral. I am also very clear about your intentions. I am now making a request to you on behalf of the beautiful country. Afterwards I hope you destroy all nuclear weapons. Only in this way can we speak for you, and we hope that after you win the war, you will establish your own country and become a permanent neutral country. As long as you agree to our terms, we will be an unbreakable ally. Now that William was communicating with Li Qing on behalf of the beautiful country, his tone had to become serious. Li Qing frowned when he heard this. Did he know what the neutral country William was talking about was actually hoping that he would remain neutral in the conflict between China and the beautiful country? This is somewhat different from his vision. His original idea was that if he could really destroy Zaire, occupying Zaire would become a natural barrier for China. It can defend China against any threats from the Pacific. Now it seems that William and others may have noticed it a long time ago, otherwise it would be impossible to say such a thing. William heard Li Qing's heavy breathing and knew the dissatisfaction in his heart, and sighed. Qing, we are friends. But from a national perspective, it is impossible for us to watch China become stronger. If you really disagree, they will side with Zaire, and then the United Nations troops will appear in Zaire. No one you know can stop the beautiful country now, not even the Chinese country. When Li Qing heard William's words, he nodded imperceptibly. The beautiful country's attitude disrupted his original plan. There was indeed a trade-off in this matter. Okay, I promise you. Li Qing's eyes slowly became firm. Are you thinking about this? William originally thought that Li Qing would think about it again, but he didn't expect that he just gave the answer after thinking for a while. Real. Real. Li Qing said firmly. No matter what, he is doomed in his childhood. His life is only a few decades. If he misses this opportunity, he will regret it. After all, he is not young anymore. If he waits a few more decades, the changes will be too big. Li Qing's decision made William happy. After all, he was an ally closely related to him. If there was a gap, his position might not be secure. Okay, the beautiful country will remain neutral. Don't worry. The two chatted for a few more words before hanging up the phone. Li Qing stood up and walked to the window, looking at the sunset on the horizon, and took a deep breath. He also wanted to inform his hometown about this matter. Even if it became a neutral country temporarily, he would not hesitate to carry out a plan to destroy the country. What he didn't expect was that the attitude of his hometown was to fully support him. The boss's original words from Qi Gang were, No matter what happens in the future, you must remember that you are a descendant of Yan and Huang, and have the blood of Yan and Huang flowing. Li Qing knew the meaning of this sentence, and he was extremely touched by his hometown's support. His reply was also firm: as long as the descendants of the Li family are still there, the inheritance will never be cut off. After receiving the secret approval of both countries, Li Qing immediately dispatched 2 Dongfeng missiles carrying nuclear warheads. Brother, these 2 babies are so powerful and domineering. Crow stood in the distance and looked at the 2 big guys, feeling very excited. Now he loves these 2 things even more than the several shotguns he has collected. Brother, the 2 coins that were in Nagasaki and Hiroshima were called Fat Man and Little Boy. How about we give them names too? Zhang Dongzhou stepped forward and rubbed his hands. Name. Li Qing raised his eyebrows and felt that Zhang Dongzhou's suggestion was good. Since Fat Man and Little Boy could go down in history, so could his 2 darlings. Do you have any good names? Li Qing thought for a while and said. How about calling it Jinling and Destroy the Japanese? Zhang Qiandan rubbed his chin and thought for a moment. Both names are easy to understand. One refers to the horrific massacre that happened decades ago, and the other refers to the literal meaning. How about calling one Tianzu and the other Dimi? Crow shook his head and said, he felt that these 2 words were domineering. Zhang Dongzhou rolled his eyes secretly and said unhappily, as expected of you, Crow, you have no level in naming. Why don't you call one Hai Xiao and the other Hai Zaichu? Crow was not convinced at first when he heard Zhang Dongzhou's words, but after thinking about it, he said, that's fine. In fact, Zhang Dongzhou is also a bad namer, but if he doesn't say it when his elder brother asked, it would seem that he has no level. Ahem, how about calling it Boom and Bang? Everyone. Crow muttered in a low voice, this is worse than Tianzu Dimi, Hai Xiao KK. Brother, you see. After hearing what Crow said, everyone looked at their elder brother Li Qing. Li Qing stroked his chin, staring at the Dongfeng missile in a trance, and spoke after a while, why not call it Zurong and Laha? Zurong? Laha? Everyone was thinking about the 2 names, guessing the intention of the eldest brother Li Qing. I know Zurong, but what does Laha do? Crow scratched his head, a little confused. Zhang Dongzhou looked at him with contempt, stupid, Laha is the ancestor of the devil in Chinese mythology. You don't even know this, don't you read online novels? Crow snorted unconvincedly, what's wrong with me only looking at Ho Long Tao? Well, Zurong is the god of fire. This Zurong was given to Mount Fuji, hoping that the god of fire could cause a volcanic eruption. Laha is the ancestor of the devil, and is also the god of destruction in Chinese mythology, representing the end of the world. Li Qing began to explain. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard the explanation of their boss, and they all said good things. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 758. Sakhalin's actions were not concealed for long. From the time the beautiful country and the Chinese country began to consciously evacuate their citizens, Asada Kamichi and Yasuda Shunichi knew about Li Qing's intentions. After all, a fool would not know why there is such a big evacuation operation. After other countries heard the news, they also began to evacuate their nationals. In the early days, the Northern Army began to gather in Hokkaido to prevent a surprise attack on Sakhalin Island. In the southern waters, Shunichi Yasuda strengthened patrols in the Xiaoli waters to prevent raids from the autonomous provincial navy. There is a strong smell of gunpowder between the 2 sides, and firefights happen almost every day. This situation lasted for 2 weeks. The lack of movement on Sakhalin made both the north and the south feel strange, but they did not relax their vigilance. At the end of August, at 8:05 in the morning, the weather was sunny, and the breeze blew through the wind chimes hanging under the eaves, making a crisp sound. Although Tokyo is no longer as prosperous as before, there are still people coming and going in an endless stream. It seems that the friction between Sakhalin and Xiaoli has not affected this place. There are still many tourists under Mount Fuji. However, there are many fewer foreign faces. In the past, there was only one foreigner in 10 people, but now there is not even one foreigner in 100 people. It happens to be Sunday, and people in childhood drag their families to worship ghosts at the foot of Mount Fuji. Daishoji Temple is a famous temple at the foot of Mount Fuji, and it enshrines the national Shinto. Some people may not understand the national shrine. In fact, just like the shrine, it enshrines small-time war criminals, but it is not as famous as the shrine. Not only ordinary people worship ghosts, but some universities and middle schools in Tokyo use weekends to organize students to come here to receive militaristic education. Follow up, those in front, don't fall behind. Follow up, Sakamoto. The middle-aged Mediterranean came holding a small green flag and shouted loudly. Oh. Okay. Sakamoto replied lazily, mumbling to the classmate next to him, hey, Aono, let's go buy a katana after a while. How can a descendant of a samurai not have a samurai sword? Well, you're the only one who doesn't have it. My grandfather gave me a samurai sword when I was a child. He used it on the battlefield. It is said that many Chinese souls are trapped in it. King Yi whispered mysteriously. Really? Take me to see you later. Didn't ask, huh? Sakamoto Shin heard what Aono said and looked at Aono curiously, only to see Aono staring at the sky without blinking. Hey, what are you looking at? Sakamoto Shin raised his head and looked at the sky. I saw a small dot coming this way with a white tail smoke. Well, what is this? Not only did he see it, but almost everyone looked up at the small dots from far to near. That's... The speed of the Dongfeng ballistic missile was very fast. Before he could finish his words, a dazzling bright light struck, and everyone under Mount Fuji lost consciousness almost at the same time. Those who were close were turned into ashes, while those who were further away felt their clothes melt and their whole bodies ached. The burning sensation made them scream in agony. Those who were lucky enough to get through were lucky enough to say that the people who were awake screamed and kept rubbing. They couldn't see anything in their eyes and fell into darkness. Even my breath was burned by the hot air. A whirlpool of flames approached, like a huge flame hurricane, spreading on the street. Wherever the flames touched, there would be fire. Those who were awake tried to stay away from the flames, while those who were unconscious were burned to death by the flames. A radius of several kilometers became a hell on earth. Flames and smoke enveloped the entire foot of Mount Fuji. Black rain continued to fall from the sky, and the white mountain tops were gradually dyed black. Ah, we survived, we survived. King Yi shouted. The fibers on his clothes were burned by the high temperature and had sunk into his skin. Due to the effect of adrenaline, he felt no pain for the time being. Aono, save me, save me. Nobu Sakamoto's mouth was full of blood, a piece of wood was inserted deeply into his chest, and he saw that he could no longer survive. Just when Aono was about to step forward to save Nobu Sakamoto, the earth shook and he also fell into darkness. Explode. 2 nuclear warheads hidden deep beneath Mount Fuji exploded. The area within several thousand meters was turned into scorched earth in an instant, and those who were lucky enough to survive the east wind were also reduced to ashes in the explosion. Huge white mushroom clouds rose one after another, covering the entire Tokyo. At the same time, Ryuhu also exploded on Miyake Island. Although it did not cause a fatal explosion, the nuclear warhead of Xiaoli had disappeared under the sea. The entire Miyake Island was in ruins, and the huge tsunami caused annihilated the 7 islands of Izu. How dare! How dare he! Asada came hit the table with his fist, which was already bleeding and dripping on the ground. First, Prime Minister, the Sakhalin Navy has attacked the Hokkaido Naval Base. What should we do? Azaa had been frightened out of his wits by the explosion of 2 nuclear bombs. Not just him, everyone was frightened. Last time the beautiful country dropped 2 nuclear bombs, 200,000 people were killed, and this time it may be even more. In their hearts, Li Qing is an out-and-out devil, madman, and anti-human. What to do? Fight, organize the navy to fight, and the army is on alert to prevent Sakhalin from forcibly landing on the island. Takemichi suppressed the anger and fear in his heart and gave the order. Yes. Azaa dragged his somewhat weak legs out of the door. But will Li Qing give him a chance? The answer is no. Sakhalin Island has been preparing for the plan to destroy the country for 5 years, and almost all of the 5 years of savings have been used to deal with Zaire. Li Qing has already issued a death order. In order to prevent Zaire from counter-attacking desperately, no matter how many soldiers Zaire has, they will all be washed away by artillery fire. The shells were sprinkled on Zaire's position as if they were free, making the army unable to raise their heads. The navy launched a crushing attack. Each of Zaire's warships was watched by 3 Sakhalin warships, and there was almost no chance to fire. The shipborne missiles were also intercepted by the powerful Aegis system. The Sakhalin Navy only lost 1 warship and wiped out the entire northern government navy. The Java Autonomous Province was not idle either. The navy opened a safe landing line for the army. A large number of land forces poured into Kyushu Island and quickly occupied major military strongholds. At the beginning, the southern government attempted to fight street battles with the Autonomous Province Army, but the army did not tolerate the other side at all. All the houses were burned down with incendiary bombs, which made the opponent's plan fail. After the army destroyed all the air defense facilities, the Air Force of the Autonomous Province began to wander around Kyushu Island and Shikoku Island unscrupulously. With absolute air superiority, the army, with the cooperation of the Air Force, began to sweep. Yes, it was like the sweep that Xiao Rizai carried out in China back then. The soldiers of the Autonomous Province were all people who had experienced the Java War and never held back when dealing with the enemy. An unprecedented large-scale sweep began on the 2 islands, and pockmarked faces became the most recognizable feature of Xiao Rizai. No pockmarked face could escape the large-scale sweep of the army. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 759. International public opinion was shaken, and almost all countries were terrified by Sakhalin's rash use of nuclear weapons. De Mao took the lead and condemned Sakhalin first. He did not expect Li Qing to actually dare to use it, which would be too threatening to De Mao. Several small Western European countries behind also condemned it. However, the countries that followed the United States and the countries that were friendly with China did not respond. It was not until these countries quarreled for a day that they found that China and the United States rarely expressed their views. Other countries also saw something and kept silent. As for the tragic situation after the nuclear explosion exposed by Xiao Rizai himself, those countries that used to shout human rights and humanitarianism are now silent. Finally, De Mao could not stand it anymore and raised objections at the United Nations, and China and the United States came to an end. The representative of the United States, regarding the nuclear weapons threat from Sakhalin raised by various countries, we have decided after research to urge Sakhalin to destroy all nuclear weapons within a time limit. China, second. Without waiting for the other 5 permanent members to express their views, China expressed its attitude first. The other 3 permanent members. The representative of China, regarding the accusation that Sakhalin started the war, we believe that Sakhalin is not a country and it is inappropriate to rashly dispatch UN forces. We oppose the participation of UN peacekeeping forces. The representative of the United States, second. The United States followed very smoothly. The other three permanent members. Good guy, these two old six must have known about Sakhalin's actions in advance, otherwise the two countries would never have reached an agreement on one thing. Ahem, of course, the war between Sakhalin and Zaire is only a local war, which is still within the controllable range and will not evolve into the Third World War. The representative of the United States explained in a way that made things more obvious. Yes, we are committed to resolving the dispute peacefully. We will actively persuade that the Korea-Japan conflict is not impossible to resolve by peaceful means. We will urge both sides of the conflict to be calm and restrained and return to the negotiation table. The Chinese representative stood up and said passionately. All the representatives of the countries rolled their eyes secretly, and their mouths twitched. The representative of the United States was different. He looked at the Chinese representative with appreciation and nodded, "Not bad, a little shameless style of our United States." The two countries not only withstood the pressure for leeching in the United Nations, but also organized a large number of troops to the north to deter the dissatisfaction of Russia, which directly angered Putin. The United States was not idle either, actively organizing military exercises between the US military stationed in South Korea and South Korea, which was obviously also to deter Russia and make it dare not take any action. During this period, the Sakhalin side had no worries at all. The Sakhalin army went south, and the autonomous province army went north. The two fronts advanced at the same time, squeezing the living space of Zaire. In addition, the two armies simultaneously implemented fortification and clearing the fields to eliminate the manpower of the Zaire people, and gradually drove the Zaire army to Toshima and Tokyo. "Brother, brother." Crow walked into the manor excitedly, calling brother from a distance, and the joy on his face was beyond words. Li Qing put down the battle report in his hand and looked at Crow with a smile. "What's wrong? So happy?" "We have taken Miyagi and driven the existing Zaire army to Toshima. The autonomous province has also taken the most difficult Yamanashi. As long as we take Gunma, we can form a siege." Crow said happily. Li Qing also laughed when he heard it. The Zaire people from both the north and the south deployed troops in Miyagi and Yamanashi. His army had been gnawing on this hard bone for 2 months, and now it has finally been gnawed down. The end of the Zaire army has come. "Brother, it's just that some women and children of Zaire have fled to the mountains. Should we?" Crow frowned. If he wanted to chase those people, it would undoubtedly waste a lot of manpower. Li Qing didn't say anything, but took out a cigarette, and Crow hurried forward to light it. Wildfires can't be extinguished, spring breeze blows and it grows again. Destroying a country is destroying a clan. Think about how Temujin survived back then. The past is a lesson, and the future is a teacher. Don't leave disasters for our descendants. Li Qing's eyes flashed. "But, brother, your reputation." Zhang Dongzhou beside him hesitated. Zhang Dongzhou still cares about his brother's reputation. After all, his personality has been pretty good over the years. Li Qing sneered and spit out a long column of smoke. "Dongzhou, we are gangsters. What reputation do we need? We are arms dealers, selling death. What reputation do we need? All the sins are on me, leaving a world of peace for future generations. Kill." All the younger brothers around him were moved, but they had already made up their minds in their hearts. No matter whether they are men, women, young or old, just blood, kill. Kill a bright world for future generations. All the sins are my fault, kill. John Candon gritted his teeth, his heart full of murderous intent. All the sins are my fault, kill. Zhang Dongzhou's eyes were full of determination. All the sins are my fault, kill. The crow's eyes became colder and colder. All the sins are my fault, kill. Since the order was issued, the army of Sakhalin Island and the autonomous province has no mercy at all. Mercy to the enemy is cruel to oneself, and cruel to one's descendants. The common people are their enemies after all. This is a war of either you die or I die. The army no longer had any scruples and quickly captured Gunma, forming a siege. They firmly blocked Keiichi Asada in the area around Tokyo, and also trapped Shunichi Yasuda in the nuclear radiation zone of Toshima. On the edge of Tokyo, Keiichi Asada sat on a big rock, panting, looking back at the remnants of the defeated army behind him. Asada, how many people do we have left? Keiichi Asada took the kettle handed over by Asada and drank a sip of water. Prime Minister, the brothers have been scattered. Now we are followed by the remnants of the Sakata Regiment, the Ono Regiment and the Ishii Regiment, a total of less than 9,000 people. The kettle in Asada's hand paused, spilling some water, which made Asada feel distressed. The water in the Tokyo area was contaminated by nuclear radiation, and there were not many clean water sources. 9,000. Asada never thought that there were only more than 9,000 people left under his command. You know, the entire northern military government's army had nearly 400,000 people before the war. Well, less than 9,000. Madian held his knees, lowered his head and said nothing. He suddenly felt that he was at the end of his rope. 9,000 people, in such a flat area, I'm afraid they can't withstand 3 rounds of artillery fire from the other side. The other side, still hasn't responded. Asada shook his head, I guess the other side doesn't accept our surrender. Madian Keiichi nodded disappointedly. In fact, Madian Keiichi had sent a message to the Sakhalin army early in the morning, willing to surrender unconditionally, but it has been ignored. Not only did the other side not respond, but they also increased the frequency of attacks. This is revenge for us. Decades ago, we invaded China and burned, killed, looted, and committed all kinds of evil. Now the other side treats us in the same way. Haha, is this the cycle of justice, retribution? Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 760. Boom. The shell exploded among the gathered Zairi soldiers, sending shrapnel flying and tearing apart the soldiers' bodies. Prime Minister, get down. Asada quickly threw Asada came under him. Explosions were heard everywhere, and the remaining soldiers fled in despair. They knew that a new round of artillery fire from the Sakhalin army had begun. More than 10 minutes later, Asada, whose leg was blown off, woke up from a coma and pushed Asada's body away from him. He stared at the broken limbs and broken arms on the ground with numb eyes, and wailing sounds kept coming to his ears. It's all my fault, I was the sinner in my childhood. Asada Keiichi shouted desperately. If it hadn't been for him, Zaili wouldn't have been divided, and Sakhalin wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it, leaving Zaili now on the verge of annihilation. If he could do it over again, he would never launch a military coup again. It's a pity that there is no regret medicine in this world. Boom! The second round of shells washed the ground, and Asada Keiichi finally died under the shells, with no bones left. Shunichi Yasuda, who was in Tommy's Hima, did not live long. Unlike Asada's death, he committed suicide by caesarean section in despair. Before his death, like Asada Keiichi, he felt extremely regretful and decided to commit suicide by caesarean section to apologize to his ancestors. He believed that it was the dispute between himself and Asada that plunged his entire life into a situation beyond redemption. By then, the 8-month-long Kurdish-Japanese War has entered its final stage. With the continuous clearance of Sakhalin and the autonomous provinces, the remaining small-time people had no choice but to hide in Tokyo and Toshima heavy nuclear radiation zones to survive. The war started in August and lasted for 8 full months. Now it is the cherry blossom season in Hokkaido in April. Li Qing and a group of senior officials officially set foot on the land of Zaili. Li Qing sat in the extended Rolls-Royce and looked at the cityscape of Sapporo, Hokkaido. The cherry blossoms falling from the trees made him feel relaxed and happy. Outside the car window, immigrants from Sakhalin and military families stood under the cherry blossom trees to take photos, with happy smiles on their faces. You know, at this time last year, people were still young, wearing kimonos and hanging out under the cherry blossom trees. Everything we do is worth it. Li Qing's voice was not loud, but Zhang Dongxiu, Crow, and others in the car heard it. Yes, brother, finally did it. Zhang Dongxiu looked at his eldest brother with admiration and lamented how lucky he was to be able to follow this hero. It's a pity that my wish of riding a horse to Tokyo to enjoy the cherry blossoms will never come true. Also, the Zhurong is not powerful, and the Mount Fuji volcano did not erupt. Crow sighed. To everyone's regret, Mount Fuji did not erupt, but it didn't matter, since the whole little life was now theirs. Tokyo was devastated by 3 consecutive nuclear explosions, with not even a tree hair left. His wish would never come true in this life. Ahem, brother, I even wrote a poem for this. Crow said seriously. Oh, Li Qing raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Crow smiled and said, I will read it to you. When spring arrives on April 8th, we will go to Tokyo to enjoy the cherry blossoms. The Han flag is flying under Mount Fuji, and the orchid is drunk under the cherry blossom trees. Once the Japanese pirates broke through the city, there were millions of soldiers looking back. It is advisable to pursue the poor bandits bravely, and do not forget the year of September 18th. After reading a poem that he spent NNN days thinking about, Crow couldn't help but feel satisfied on his face. After listening to it, everyone smiled and expressed their approval. Although some parts were not smooth, but based on Crow's elementary school level, it was okay. It is better to use the remaining courage to chase the poor bandits, and don't forget the September 18th. Okay, very good. Good. It seems that he was influenced by Isabella. Li Qing chuckled. Crow, who was praised by Li Qing, scratched his head in embarrassment. It seemed that he still had some cultural bacteria. Well, like the crow said, I can't do it for the rest of my little life, not even 1 \. Li Qing instructed again. Others echoed simultaneously. After that, the army began a second round of cleaning operations to remove the rats hiding in the dark. After another 2 months, even the small-time people in the heavily irradiated area were dead, and the cleanup operation ended. Immediately afterwards, the third cleaning operation began secretly. It was not until a year later, after many rounds of cleaning, that the 4 islands were truly clean. This happens to be the end of TICO 2023. On January 1, 2024 in Eastern Yuan, Li Qing officially announced the establishment of the Eastern Xia Republic, with its capital set in Xiaojing, formerly Sapporo, Hokkaido. The territory of Dongxia Kingdom extends from Cape Elizabeth, Sakhalin Island in the north, to the former Huaxia Autonomous Province of Java in the south, to Minami Torai Island in the east, and to Yonaguni Island in the west, with a land area of 561,000 square kilometers. On the first day after the establishment of the Republic of China, China and the United States took the lead in recognizing the legitimacy of the Dongxia Republic and establishing diplomatic relations with it. Subsequently, Southeast Asian countries recognized the legitimacy of the Dongxia Republic and established diplomatic relations with it. Then Western Europe, South America, Africa. A week later, all countries except Daimao established diplomatic relations with the Dongxia Republic and sent ambassadors to each other. In the days that followed, the Dongxia Republic rapidly developed its economy by virtue of its unique geographical location and its heritage of advanced aspects of daily life. In just 30 years, it has reached the top 10 levels in the world and officially entered the developed world. In addition, under the leadership of President Li Qing, the population of the Dongxia Republic has grown steadily. With free education, medical care, and pension measures, the Dongxia People's Happiness Index ranks among the top in the world, and the Suicide Index ranks last in the world. In terms of culture, the Dongxia Republic insists on traditional education as the core, integrating the essence of Eastern and Western cultures and removing the dross, re-establishing cultural confidence, and the spiritual outlook of the younger generation has been completely renewed, and national self-confidence has been enhanced. In terms of immigration, in order to ensure the bloodline of the Dongxia people, the president has issued a series of decrees with the blackening of Gaul as a warning. For example, if a Dongxia man marries a white or black wife, his mixed-race offspring will be deprived of the right to Dongxia nationality. If a woman marries a white or black wife, she will be deemed to have automatically renounced her Dongxia nationality. Except for those who have made great contributions. Therefore, the Dongxia green card has become the most difficult green card in the world. But everyone in the world is still flocking to the Dongxia Republic, and some people even give up the superior treatment of the United States and join the Dongxia Republic with their research results. Just because this is the safest country in the world. In order to improve the sense of security of the citizens of Dongxia Republic, President Li Qing ordered a nationwide ban on guns and drugs from the beginning, which was even stricter than his hometown. With zero tolerance for drug and gun bans, coupled with the good relationship between Dongxia Republic and the United States, Dongxia Republic has become a window for the United States to understand the East and a new tourist destination. Some people even lingered, and a large number of talents settled here and worked hard to obtain green cards.